In 1977, Pink Floyd released their album Animals, and my friend Matt and I are going to talk about it on this episode of Records with Ray. So out of all the Pink Floyd albums, Animals is your favorite?
Number one.
Now, why would you say that? And you like everything from Pink Floyd, right?
From start to finish.
From
easily.
start to finish, because...
Yeah. Well, actually, to be honest, I haven't heard the latest. What is it, The River or something like that?
Yeah.
I've discounted everything. Division Bell, I saw them on tour, but after that, I really stopped paying attention to them musically. I don't think the level of talent was less, but...
Well, it just seems to me like when they did Momentary Lapse of Reason, the name Pink Floyd, but, well, first of all, Roger Waters wasn't there.
Right.
And I don't even think Richard Wright was a member of Pink Floyd when they did it.
And it's not to discount the talent of David Gilmour.
No, not at all. But I guess even supposedly they were saying, like, that's how things were with The Wall, too. Like,
yeah.
At that point, Richard Wright was, like, on his way out, or he was going to get fired. I don't want to say that The Wall was a Roger Waters, like, solo album, but it was a couple steps away.
No, but over the course of their career, you could certainly tell the albums where Waters had the dominant influence on all of the writing, at least from a lyrical standpoint.
It seems to me, and tell me if you agree with me or not, but Animals was Pink Floyd firing on all cylinders.
Definitely.
It's like...
I think they were...
They're still a band.
Definitely. And to me, they were at the top of their game, technically.
Yeah.
And it sounded to me like they had some fun playing around and experimenting on the studio side of things. There's some effects that they use on the drums and some synth things fading into vocals and out of vocals that I think really show that they kind of started to master not just the instruments but the studio.
Wouldn't just playing devil's advocate here, but wouldn't you think like people would have said that about Pink Floyd at Dark Side of the Moon?
They could have said it even earlier than that.
Yeah.
I mean, because look at a song like Astronomy Domine. I mean, you start out with these crazy looped samples, and their light show had just as much to do with what was going on musically.
Yeah.
They had a control over the whole experience from the beginning. But
I see. I'm a big fan of Animals too. Now, obviously, the idea of it was that it's kind of following George Orwell's Animal Farm, where each song is about, well, it's supposed to represent someone. Sheep, well, sheeple, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Pigs are politicians. Dogs are essentially, salesmen or something like that.
Capitalism.
Capitalism. But one thing I'll say about like Dark Side of the Moon compared to like say Animals is like Animals. There's this bite. There's this angst.
Sure.
There's this like level of I don't want to say anger.
I think it's cynicism.
Cynicism, yeah.
Social, political criticisms.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it, not to say that reached its peak, but it was there. There was a bitterness that was there that on an album like Dark Side of the Moon, they were still attached to the idea of a rock album.
Yeah.
And the fact, like we've talked about before, where that really reached really high into the charts.
Yeah.
For a sort of
it stayed
progressive rock album.
Didn't it stay on the charts for like decades or something?
I think
like
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it holds a record for the longest being on the Billboard charts. And granted, there were some pure rock songs on that album.
Yeah, well, there's definitely more musical friendly songs on Dark Side, like Money, Time.
Sure.
But when I think you got what's Pigs on the Wing, 1 and 2, and they're only like a couple minutes long.
Yeah,
but they're literally like an intro and out sort of
bookends, really.
But sheep, dogs, and pigs, they're all like almost 10 minutes long.
Over 10 minutes long. Yeah.
So do you think?
So essentially, the album's divided.
Do you think when Animals was released, do you think they even cared about hey, we need a single?
No. No.
Or did even Pink Floyd at that time even need to be concerned about having a single?
Probably not, because you look at them coming off of Wish You Were Here, and they had a song like Wish You Were Here, which is like the sing-along hit of their shows.
Actually, when I think about it, most of the songs that I hear on the radio are usually something off of Wish You Were Here.
Or Dark Side. Yeah, easily. Yeah, and it's not often you're going to hear anything from... What could they possibly play from Animals?
That's what I'm saying.
On the radio.
And there was never any kind of like radio edit.
Right. Cheap radio dub, yeah.
It's just the end or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think it was really the height of, for me, of them as a band. Now, not to say or discount The Wall, because that was a monument in itself, but it was a different thing. It was a different animal, you know. It was
Animals was a different animal. Well, one thing about The Wall too is, it's like if you were to ask me like what's like my favorite song from Floyd, it's like, well, The Wall's my favorite, but I see that whole thing as like one unit,
right? And
it'd be very, very hard for me to like separate all the different songs to be like, okay, yeah, this would be my favorite,
right? Well, and even you have songs like pure rock songs like Young Lust.
Yeah.
Contrast that to Mother, you know, I mean, like two completely different sides of the spectrum. So yeah, there were certainly some singles. Even Another Brick in the Wall. Okay, part 1, part 2, part 3. There's only one of those a year on the radio. It's not like they play these little weird...
Yeah, and that's my least favorite one, actually.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, Another Brick in the Wall part 1 is incredible, and 3 is just awesome, too. But Animals was... I remember hearing that for the first time, and I was really taken. The thing I really loved about Pink Floyd was the fact that you had this band that was not afraid to take chances. And obviously, by the time that they released Animals, they had nothing to prove to anybody.
Sure, and I'm sure they had studio budget and studio backing and label backing and everything to do whatever really they wanted. And you look at, I mean, even down to the artwork. Imagine that album sitting in the record store. You know, like their name doesn't even appear on the cover.
Yeah, that's a bold statement.
Sure, I mean, a lot of those albums, I bought them probably first on cassette.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember buying Animals probably at whatever age I was. I was driving.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that in the car and thinking that it was not like the Pink Floyd that I was used to. Because I probably over-listened to The Wall. It was a school bus kind of headphone album, however many times on the way to school in the morning. An album like The Final Cut, I was familiar with that.
Yeah.
It was like Roger Waters, oh, surprise, singing about World War II again. But Animals was a different thing. It was you know, you hear the Rhodes and the keyboard solos and the bass, and I mean, again, these stretched out over 10-minute songs, and there were really only three real songs on the album. It was a different thing. It wasn't really that Pink Floyd that you knew, and but
it was definitely going to become the Pink Floyd that everyone was going to know and love.
For sure, yeah. But again, do they really play a lot of that stuff? Had they played those songs out? I mean, after, you know, like, talk about them touring in the 90s with Division Bell. I don't think there was anything in their set at that point from that album. Yet they played almost in its entirety Dark Side of the Moon as part of those sets.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I'm guessing, the next album that they put out was The Wall.
Sure.
So then when they toured with The Wall, they just did The Wall. Did they even tour for Final Cut?
I don't know. I mean, what was that, 81, 82?
Yeah, and if they did, I mean, who knows what they were playing.
Yeah.
And then when you get to, and then like when they got to Momentary Lapse of Reason, Roger Waters isn't even in the band.
Sure.
Well, then they're definitely not going to like, hey, we need to concentrate on the Roger Waters material.
And from a live point, they were always, you know, the band live in those years was a lot of session musicians.
Yeah.
Because they weren't playing. I mean, even Waters now, when he plays The Wall on tour, you know, look at the number of musicians he has on stage. Insane. Whereas the early years, there was a key, you know, it was a four-piece band on stage.
That's what I'm saying. That was the thing. I remember when I saw Pink Floyd, when they got back to, when they did Momentary, and it's like the Pink Floyd orchestra.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, there's 3 guys that are in the fucking band, but like, who are all these other guys?
Right.
And as I said, I mean, like, Pink Animals was kind of like their pinnacle of Pink Floyd as a band, being on stage and performing as a band,
and still reflecting who they were in that sort of bitterness and cynicism and socio-political commentary and, you know, all those levels of what they were.
Who would have thought that bitterness and cynicism would be the ingredients to make a classic rock album like Animals? But I just want to let you know, like, I'm recording right now, but you don't have to feel like you're on, or like, okay, now everything we're gonna have is.
I get it.
You get the idea.
Yeah. So this is the outtakes right now that you're gonna put at the very end of it.
Well, unless you say something funny. If you don't say anything funny or cool, then there's no outtakes.
I don't think I'm gonna say anything funny. I don't think I ever really say anything funny.
Yeah, there's nothing really funny to say about Animals.